I just think it's a sinus
Yeah.
infection. We just haven't had one in a while, and it's a drag.
Well, the weather changes too. I mean, the rain and then the dust is like. I mean, I've been sneezing quite a bit because just I think the pollen's up, and I'm not usually allergic to pollen anymore.
Me
But
either.
so much rain, it's like the plants going, "Yay, we're alive!"
Yeah, and I think there's some new pollen out there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that was the
Anyway,
thinking.
well, the show started. We should probably start talking about stuff
Here
relevant.
we are. Much more fun to talk about dating and relationships.
Yes, right.
So this is WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network Radio, TV, and podcast #1 Internet Singles Talk Network. This is Let's Talk Dating with Christine and Barry. Hi, Barry.
Hi, Christine.
So yes, I think because we go back and forth and add, what we want to do as our future subjects,
Indeed.
and then she picks them every week, and we're fun surprised about which one she picked. And when you suggest, because I remember you suggesting this, and I thought this is so intriguing
Hmm.
about don't another failed lover, and I was like, well, you go, Barry. So Barry, would you like to channel what you were thinking about that? Because I find it so intriguing.
It's funny because now I'm looking back and I'm going, "What did I think about silent there?" Because the thing is, for me, as soon as I think about it now, I see two different aspects. So I'll put both on the table and we can talk about both.
Okay, great.
One of which is, um, how do I approach this? One of which is basically is that when we make really good friends, this is a very what's it looking for? It's a thin ice topic for me because
Wow.
there's so much about being put in the friend zone or about you want to be friends first, and I'm talking about how sometimes you can look at somebody who you've been friends with for a while and decide you want to try and be lovers, and then it's like it doesn't work out, then the friendship gets ruined. So that's one piece alone. Put it on the side.
Yeah.
The other one, though, and this is the one that I want to talk about as well, because I did it myself and definitely have done this thing where I have had friends that I gave up for a partner, where I would actually desert them. I would actually, because my lover would either say something or I would feel like from there was a resentment towards my friends. So I would just leave my friends alone for the sake of the lover. And then when the relationship breaks up, my friends aren't there anymore. Well, actually, they came back, but generally speaking, they're not always there because they sort of, he's gone, forget it, let's move on, sort of thing. And so both of these things are in the air for me around this topic, because friendship and lovers can really get messed up together ultimately on different levels. So I think if we just put it in that sort of bucket, we can sort of talk about it in different ways. So does that help you get started?
So helpful. Yes. And I like both directions because certainly both have happened to me as well.
Yeah, definitely for me.
That
Yeah.
it is amazing how many people wish for a friend first and to really have somebody who gets you and that you have such a fun time together. And wow, it can develop into a really wonderful relationship from that. I mean,
Hmm.
I've mentioned my brother and sister-in-law who've been married for not quite 50 years, and that they truly are each other's best friend. They have lots of friends, lots of other things in their life, but they're the person they'd much rather spend time with. You know,
Yeah,
generally, they really enjoy spending time together. So isn't that nice if you can have all of that?
if you
And
can. Yes.
yes, it's kind of rare. And then the other part is you can have friends like that you like the kind that you don't talk for a little while, but you go right back to just as intimate and close and sharing and as if no time has gone by.
Right.
And the people that you really are your inner circle friends that you share your most intimate personal thoughts and feelings and challenges that you're having in your life with, knowing that they'll accept them, that they will be open to hearing them, that they'll give you really good feedback too, that they're not just going to placate you. I mean, that's a really valuable friend.
Yeah.
And I think it probably is pretty rare that if you've had that kind of friendship for a while, that it could turn into a love interest. I think that you've, in my world, it had reached its zenith. This is as good as it's going to get, and I have no complaints about it. I think it's terrific, but it's not. There isn't the extra the extra chemistry or attraction or whatever it is that pushes you over the edge for that. And it's interesting because one person we tried. it seemed like good timing, and who knows, let's see. And we did end up dating for a while, a couple years, and then it didn't work out.
Right.
And he, more than I, was really disappointed and had to back off. And I thought, oh crap, I have lost this friendship. I am going to be so sad. And we did talk about, wouldn't that be crappy if that happened? And we're like, oh yeah, I think we could be grown up about it. And he ended up coming back saying, I know we talked about this, and it really was a commitment, and I just needed to lick my wounds. And we remained friends still to this day.
Right.
And wow, that has not happened very often at all.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's an interesting position to find oneself in, to to have this opportunity or this attraction is outside of the framework of just being friends. And I'm trying to think of any experience I had where it went from one to the other back again. I have had relationships where they started out as lovers and became friends, and it was better being friends than it was being lovers, because it was like, well, you didn't hit it off very well in chemistry wise, but we had real good friendship, which actually worked.
Wow.
And I've also had friendships who started friendships, became lovers, and then didn't go anywhere after that. Like, it just gone. So I've had 2 out of 3, so to speak. The friend to lover to friend, that is a rarity. So you're right. That's not something that's easy to do, because there's something about crossing that line from just being friends to having physical intimacy that changes the game. It's like moves the goalposts,
And I think for both people, for different reasons. And, it used to be that the rhetoric was, and I'm sure it's still, that men could have just sex. They didn't have to be emotionally involved. And generally, women would tend to get more emotionally involved when they'd have sex with a man. And what I have found, certainly a lot in my coaching, because men do talk about everything that's going on in their lives.
Indeed.
They're much more vulnerable, especially widowed men, that if they have an intimate sexual relationship with a woman, they do start caring. And what's interesting is there are certainly a number of women now in this age group of over 50 who have mentally said, I don't want to do that again. I don't want to get that involved. I want to have a friend. I'm fine having sex now and then. So I'm not making any claims about, the percentages or anything. I just think it's interesting that there seems to have been somewhat of a shift in our age group, especially people that are widowed, since I am a widow and I end up talking to a lot of widowed people, where I'm having to coach men about going slower and guarding their heart more than I did women before. But because I had to do women before, and also to really dig in with the women about why are you guarding your heart? I'm not trying to talk you out of it. I just want you to consciously think about why are you holding back from that? What is the reason? Let's make it a really valid reason, and not just, all men are terrible, or I don't want to give my heart away again to somebody who might die. I mean, there's all that comes up, and those are valid reasons, but let's say them out loud, because I think that that's where the disconnect can happen between the two people. If first you're not honest with yourself about what is it you want, and have your feelings changed, and are you doing anything different now, and how are you doing? And I have more people now having those conversations, and it's helping. They're all like, oh my God, I could never say that. And it's so vulnerable, certainly to say out loud to the other person, because usually I'm only talking to one side of the couple.
Yeah.
And yet, when we talk again, they're like, it was such a relief. And they said it was a relief that somebody said out loud, this is how I'm feeling. How are you feeling? And the next time we're together, do you feel any differently? I've found that the honesty, even though it's initially scary, is taking a lot of the pressure away.
It's almost healing, in fact.
I think so. It's been kind of fascinating to watch it happen.
I want to speak to a couple of things you said, talking about how men can be more vulnerable. I had this image pop in my head, and they talk about how. No, let me go to the animal kingdom first and explain what I mean. Come back to that. So there's vertebrates and invertebrates. Vertebrates are mammals, birds, etc., that have a skeleton structure inside with flesh on the outside. So that basically they're softer on the outside and harder in the middle, sort of thing. So we use it in very broad strokes. Invertebrates the other way around, where they have their skeleton on the outside. It's the they call it carapace. Carapace, the word.
Great word.
But like most insects have a hard casing, soft inside, sort of thing. So they're kind of the opposite of each other. Okay, now take that. If you got a horrible image here, take it out of your head for a minute. I'm just explain the differences. Emotionally speaking, and I'm not making a direct parallel, just to be clear as I'm saying this, because somebody can say, "What do you mean by that?" Is that
are you calling me a bug?
Actually, no, I'm calling them the bugs. Explain exactly what I mean. Because truly, energetically speaking, and emotionally speaking, women tend to be more emotionally on the outside and some more strength on the inside. So parallel to the way the mammals are in a sense. And so, and men on the other way around, where men generally have a hard shell and they're very soft emotionally on the inside, but they protect it with this hard shell. That's the way men are really wired, because we are wired not to be emotional. But when it comes to sex, especially for men after a certain age, because when men are young, they're kind of like bravado and gung-ho, and the screw woman don't care because they keep the shell up. But as men get older, that shell's got cracks in it. And there's more ways for emotions to get in and out, especially after being a widow, especially for men who've lost somebody, because the grief process cracks open that shell. And so when men are moving into intimacy, physical and sexual, with a woman, they feel much more exposed because the protected vulnerability is shown up now. And so after that experience, they may actually be more vulnerable and more scared than the women who've got the emotions on the outside, who are used to having their emotions battered around to a degree. Again, these generalities, but that's the expression of the feeling I'm getting, is the two differences, because coming from different angles. Again, we know men and women, Mars, Venus type idea. Well, this in reality, women generally are more emotionally expressive, experienced, and frankly, oftentimes women are more emotionally mature than men are, because men aren't trained to work with their emotions, and oftentimes they bury them. So the different levels of exposure and vulnerability switches sides.
I have found it so fascinating. It's just been hi. Oh, there's Barry's voice. I have to cruise by. I like his voice.
Yep.
It's been such an interesting, eye-opening experience to talk to these men in this really open, honest way of how they're feeling and how hard it is on them right now. It's very hard because they're not used to experiencing this. I mean, as hard as it's been on women to get it all too carried away before they really found out, does this guy qualify for my heart? Does he qualify for my body? Does he care about me as much as I care about him? I mean, that's just been for eons. We women have good news and bad news. It's what we've been through a lot. Not so much men. And this is an eye-opening experience for them. And it's been kind of funny. They'll go, oh, wow, I can see why this might not have been so great when I was a younger man, which is just makes my heart happy when they really come to that realization. And I believe that, less practice, less exposure to this is making them get so vulnerable and so easier hurt. And then, we women like you men when you're strong. We like when you're masculine. We like when you're in charge. And we're going to not talk about the 70s and 80s where they all said, oh, I want a man that'll cry at the movie and share his feelings. Well, that didn't work out well, because then we all went to guys that were really not good for us at all, those bad guys. And yet, as you get close to each other in a friendship, if that's all it is, and or an intimate love having sex relationship, we want to be a safe place for the man's feelings to land. And how does both sides sort that out? Because the guy's like, ooh, now I'm feeling these vulnerable feelings. Is she safe? And she's like, well, Gus, does this still feel like masculine enough for me? I mean, the sorting has been fascinating to me.
Oh, yeah.
Fascinating.
that is the wonder of this. I mean, I know there's lots of articles and writers about how men and women sort of shift places as they get older as well. Part of the maturity and the evolution after menopause and after all the other things too is that the emotional makeup and the hormones tend to shift gears for men and women. So women tend to end up being more masculine energetically, and men tend to be more feminine energetically as they get older.
Mhm.
Not always, but that's kind of a tendency. So there's certainly some credence to the whole premise of this. And yet, and it's true because what you said earlier about how back in the 70s, men crying was like what women wanted and they got so bad. I think the truth is what women really want is a man who's strong enough to hold the space for them, but can be emotional enough to make space for them. It's kind of like both is what women want. I mean, to be honest, women want everything. But the truth is that we as men can be the everything they're asking for in that sense when we do the work, when we do our work,
Mhm.
not pretending, but we do the real work. And I have a whole conversation about that. But the thing is that the understanding of connection, again, because friendship versus that failed lover, part of this conversation I want to talk is about, because let's wait after the break, because we get the break soon, about the giving up your friends for a relationship, because that's another piece of the topic. But let's stay in this one.
Oh
I
yeah,
was
I
trying to go
figured
off the
we'd do
topic.
that the second
Yeah,
half.
yeah. I'm jumping in. It's like, let me stay here. Let's not jump ahead. So
Oh
the
yeah, I
experience
like
then.
this subject a lot, a lot. Yeah.
I had a feeling you did. The understanding that things will change when a couple gets past certain boundaries and crosses lines into intimacy on a physical level, even though they may have had extreme intimacy on the emotional level, it can be a blessing and it can be a curse. And that's the thing is, unfortunately, with this sort of discussion, with this sort of situation, there isn't really any way of knowing ahead of time what's going to happen. Like you were saying with your friend, is that you hoped and you said, if hopefully we'll come out the other side in a place that is quote healthier and okay, but you wouldn't know till you went through it if it would happen or not. So this is definitely a roll the dice experience, so to speak, because we do in fact have that thing where we think it's going to be great and be fine, but we don't know until we get there.
Yeah. So those are another one of those adult conversations when we all feel like teenagers. We feel like teenagers when we're having all the chemistry and the fun sexual experiences. And then when one or the other says, no, I don't think I want to do it. Well, then the teenager comes out in vengeance of feelings hurt and mad and frustrated and how dare you.
Oh yeah.
So that's the other thing is to be honest about, yeah, I'm feeling kind of 12 and I need to tell you about my feelings about being 12 and to be transparent. If this is a person that you really do care about and they care about you, to be able to move to that next level of this is what's going on for me, what's going on for you. And it can be really a challenge. It really can. But if you've built up the foundation ahead of time, which is what we had done, and when it didn't work, I found that we hadn't really been able to build that foundation before. On either side, I can tell you had my 12-year-old moments too.
Right.
I never stalked anybody, but it was the closest I ever came. It was just so not me. And I'm like, who is this person that's taken over my mind and my emotions and my body? And in hindsight, I go, yes, it really wasn't going to work out, but I was really upset when he decided that we could go back to being friends. And I was like, I don't want to be just friends with you. And how dare you? And it was weird to be that person too. So to be honest with yourself and really clear about, yep, I'm being 12.
Another piece I like the puzzle in this particular area. So I'm looking back I'm just scanning through my own history. That's like, do I see any highlights along that way that I did things? But I look at a couple of relationships, one of which we were friends first and we became lovers. And we had a really clear line that she didn't realize that I crossed without realizing it. Like in terms of intimacy, I was so comfortable with her vulnerability that she wasn't comfortable with. And so she ended up pushing me away and we broke up. We became friends since, but it was quite a leap from then to when we became friends again, because I was going to say outrage is the wrong word, but the discomfort she had with that exposure, so to speak, to be seen that way by me in a way that she wasn't ready for and I was okay with, was so disjointed, even though we had quite a good rapport, friendship built beforehand. So, yes, long story short, we did become friends again, and suddenly a lot more detached at that point. However, it wasn't an easy shift out of like, oh, sex to be friends again. So in the context of this position, I would suggest, and like you were saying as well, to move from that good friendship into sexual connection and sexual relationship, it isn't immediate like, okay, switch gears back in friendship again, no problem. I don't know if anybody can do that one, frankly. So I would suggest in this context about, of moving from friendship to lover to friendship, know that there may in fact have to be a gap of something after the lover back to friendship that might not be as quick as you'd like. So bear in mind, if you are considering that option with your good friend, know there might be some time you won't be friends at all for a period of time. We need time to heal and transform the connection back into good friendship, because it can be challenging otherwise.
Yeah, such a good point. And if it's something you, anybody has never done, we can imagine all we want and we can make all these great plans and we can have these great conversations, and then the whole thing can just blow up in one or both of your spaces. And to be prepared for that too,
Yeah.
because you don't know what you don't know about how you're going to feel or not feel. And I think it's important to go, well, this is what I'm hoping to happen, and this is what I'd like to happen, and let's see what we do if none of that happens, and it's something completely, we don't like it at all. We don't like what happened at all.
So I'll just add as a PS to that to really underscore this point is that, frankly, on both people's part, whoever initiates and whoever's receiving on this energy about they want to shift the relationship from friendship to lovers, is you've got to be honest with every single aspect you feel. Anything you're thinking, anything you're feeling, you got to be that raw and real to make sure that when you do choose to cross that line, you cross it with eyes open. Yeah. Because the other part of this as well is that oftentimes, and this is true if people are dating and become lovers, oftentimes they do it with their eyes closed. They're not really seeing everything. They're ignoring some of the warning signs, the red flags stuff when they walk in. Well, if you have a good friendship, there might be red flags you didn't notice before you go into the lover stage that you may want to look at before you say yes, because you start realizing, hang on a second, I'm going to discover things I don't want to discover about myself or my partner.
Yeah.
That maybe I don't want to go there. So it's important to be honest all the way through, and especially about how you feel, because it's tempting to go, oh, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine, because we can convince ourselves in our brains that we're going to be fine. But emotionally, in a heart level, we're going to go, no, we're not. So have that conversation all the way through. It's needed if you've good friendship. Ideally, you've already got the intimacy on the communication level and the emotional level, so you can speak this truth. So then, don't give that up before you become lovers.
Oh, I think that is so important, because one of the things I talk about is that we tend to have a manual inside of us, and we have a chapter for when we first met somebody, and we have a chapter when we're getting more serious, and we have a chapter that we get exclusive, and then we have a chapter when we have sex, and a chapter when we get engaged and get married. And people are like, why are they different? I go, because they went to a new chapter. And so to talk about, this is what I've done in my next chapter and what I think I might do with you, and what would you do in your next chapter, and how have you done it? And even though there still could be some variables, because you could bring out different things in each other, what you said is so essential about, well, who are you when you do this new thing?
Yeah.
Let me see the transparency, and let me show you mine, because I think that gives an even more safe foundation about, well, I told you out loud this new thing that might feel extra vulnerable or extra scary or extra exciting, because gosh, maybe you want to do new different things with them, and they need to know that ahead of time. That would be helpful. So I think that's so essential, that you need to have built up that kind of open, transparent, whatever you're doing, that kind of conversation and relationship, so that when you move to a next step, you already go, oh yeah, we do that. We talk about challenging things, hard things, scary things, new things, and just do it anyway, right?
Yeah. And frankly, if you do that, and you do recognize the chapters and you do the right piece, I love that way you put it that way, with the book, you each had their own book. I've known that one before. It's good. I like that.
Thank you.
Then the opportunity to transform that relationship from being a failed lover to be a successful lover is possible.
Oh, I love how you wrap that up with such a lovely bow.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. So we'll go off to a break with all of the wonderful commercials, and then we'll come back and talk about how people go off to the island of their new lovers
Deserting their
and leave all
friends.
their friends stranded.
Indeed. See you in a minute. I'll come back from the break.
We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm John Thomas. I want to share with you a professional products and services directory we call Going Solo Directory. And you need to check this out. If you want exposure to your business or are seeking professional product or services, this directory has it all. And that membership, for the many special features, you get the benefit of a worldwide exposure with a 40-minute video interview on an international business show showcase. All this for just one low annual fee. For more information, contact GoingSoloDirectory.com.
And we're back.
And we're back. Let's talk dating with Christine and Barry, and we're talking about don't trade a good friend for yet another failed lover. And it's just been such a fun conversation. The first half we talked about if you are friends first and then you want to turn into lovers, and then what happens if it doesn't work out? You know, can you go back to being friends? Is it never going to work out again? And all the different nuances to navigate when that happens.
Right.
So this had been your title that you had suggested. And so the other part is it's so tempting. And I think women do this more, that you get involved with a guy and you kind of neglect your friends. You know, go out. I tell it, you go off to the island of whatever his name is. And I will tell you what I've discovered. It's been kind of a fun study for the 6 years I've been going to these widow dinners, that if a woman, a widow in our dinner group, meets a man within our group, they keep coming as a couple. If she meets a man from outside the group, she'll bring him, and they still come pretty regularly.
Okay.
If a man meets a woman within the group, they'll keep coming. If a man meets a woman from outside the group, she often will come once or twice, and they're fascinated that we're not sitting around crying, but then he won't come back.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow.
I think she takes a look at that room full of women and says, yeah, no.
Oh, the fear factor.
I think so. I think that has a lot to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's part of it too, that if you're not already secure in yourself first, because that's where it has to start.
Absolutely.
I'm worthy, I'm good enough, this person, I'm going to make sure that they think that about me. But if you don't already think that, I found that even when somebody tells you how wonderful you are, you don't always take it in and say thank you and believe it.
Yeah.
You're going to think all these maybe incorrect things about if they talk to somebody else when you're at a party together, or notice somebody that walks by, a man or a woman. I mean, this is equal opportunity I've seen.
Yeah.
So that's really where you need to start, so that you know that you could have separate things that you could do together. That if you do things together, that don't you want them to talk to your friends? Don't you want them to like your friends? And also the clingy. So this is the other part of it too. The clingy, I want to spend all my time with you and you can't go spend time with other people. I think that could play into you lose your other friendships. So what happened? You mentioned that's happened to you, and how did you navigate that, Mr. Barry?
Not well, to be honest.
We learn, right? That's how we learn.
True. Yeah. My early relationships were basically the idea of introducing my girlfriend to any of my male friends was off the table. Like, no way. And the girls I was around, I felt like I was cheating on them when I was in a relationship. So I had this double-edged sword going on where I was like, cutting myself despite what's going on. And of course, nothing to do with my girlfriend. That was all me, my stuff I carried around. So I carried the energy. And oftentimes in relationships, and the other part of that was in relationships is, and this is until I really got to understand about the codependent piece. And when I went through the masculine and feminine lessons of 2007, pretty much every relationship I was in became like, I was myopic, basically. It was like in my face, like nothing else mattered. So friendships fall aside because I was getting all my needs met emotionally from my partner and didn't have, in quote, need for my friends. That was the selfish way I was acting, to be kind of deliberate about it. And it wasn't, and partly because I had wiring that I guess I grew up with, beliefs that I grew up with, that the relationship was more important than anything else. So I had to put everything into that relationship, no matter how good or bad it was. And I would give up all my friendships. And I look back and there are friendships I never got back again after that. I didn't get a chance to go back to them for whatever reasons, too long it took, or they moved on to other things, or it was. And so it's been interesting because having been now single for almost 17 years, and after that transformation experience back in 2007, where I really got to understand that authentically aligned to a masculine heart and what masculine values are, my purpose comes before a relationship, so that I always have something I'm aligned to that isn't my relationship. Because up to that point, I always put relationship first, so we get in the way of everything. I mean, literally get in the way of everything. Nothing else would come close to mattering as much because I was so in the relationship. And again, no matter how good or bad it was. And one reason is why some of those relationships didn't last that long, because I used them up. I didn't have enough other things to keep me going. Because that's one of the other things, by the way, that's when me as men, I can't speak for women, but when we as men have multiple things that we're aware of, like purpose, focus in our lives, hobbies we do that are always going on. When we have a relationship, it doesn't take us away. And we then have enough occupying our other mindset, we put all our good stuff into the relationship sort of thing. And I've talked about, I think it's about in our podcast, David Daly's book, The Way of the Superior Man, which is one of my favorite books. It's a seminal book he wrote 25 plus years ago. In chapter 7, he talks about a man's purpose must come before his relationship. And I've since seen that shift for me, because having been on the spiritual path for 30 plus years, I would say that a man's relationship to spirit comes first, then relationship to purpose second, then relationship to partner third. And that's not to put that in, it's not a hierarchy, but it's about where the focus energy is. My spiritual fulfillment doesn't come from my partner, it comes from spirit. My fulfillment of my mission on earth, my purpose on earth comes from my work, what I do in the world. My relationship can have all the gravy of that, but it doesn't have to fulfill roles it's not meant to fulfill.
That is such a good way to put it, because a woman, because I happen to be one of those.
Indeed, you
and
are.
I know better, but it's good that you pointed out. We're like, I don't want to come third. What do you mean I come third?
Right.
I mean, those are really highfalutin good things to have, Mr. Selby.
But
do I want to come third even to them? And it's like, if you're an electric car, the way that you're going to be your best running is you go get plugged in somewhere. And then you can come drive me around all I want. You can play with me if you want. You've got all your juices going. So if I think of it that way, because I thought, oh, how am I going to say this that it doesn't put it in that hierarchy thing? That, because I am very clear that all men want to be their best selves when they're with us. That's really your goal. And you keep trying to figure out what are the things that are going to help you be your best self. And it's not a hierarchy at all.
Correct.
So isn't. Like in a hierarchy, like women who are dating men who have minor children, I keep saying, I don't know how you're ever going to come first till those kids are adults. I mean, really, wouldn't you want that this is his first priority, is his children? Wouldn't that be something you'd admire about him? So that is definitely your second place. And who knows who else could be even before you. that we think that way automatically as women, and that is accurate. But in this way, not at all. That you want to find out what ways he charges himself up, what ways does he feel even more whole, so that he does bring his best self to you. And leaving your occupation or your spiritual interests or your friendships can deplete you in ways that now don't allow you to be your best self with us.
Absolutely true. I did that more than once because I didn't know this, back in the day.
So the women didn't encourage it. You made that up, that decision on your own.
Nothing to do with them. No, it's totally on me. I had this rule somehow I put inside, maybe from my family, or that wasn't overtly spoken, because I don't think my parents did have that relationship that way. But I had this belief that my relationship will be my goal and my focus, so nothing else can come above it or before it or any of that stuff.
Wow.
And I proved that doesn't work multiple times.
You got the T-shirt to prove that one, huh?
I didn't even get that, no, but could have done.
Yeah, and we women get filled up in different ways. The nurturing part, the giving back part. So we still have to find things that are we need to be involved with so that we are our best person for you.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we accept it better that I'm not putting it ahead of you. And I don't think guys ever even think that way, that we'd be putting it ahead of us, unless you don't get enough time. If you don't get enough time or attention in a healthy way, then yeah. I think sure. So, that's the hard thing too with women that are in this age group, of how much do they devote to their family, especially grandkids. That's really a challenge right now for men who are like, they don't even have time to date. They're so involved with their families. Mm-hmm. And so the conversation that I have with the women who come to me and we talk about this is, what is it you're getting from that? Let's make sure you're still getting that. But is it because this other place is more empty in you? And if you started getting the other place more filled, you'd have some chance to back off a little from what you're doing. And it's been fascinating to talk, because I do a lot of interviewing. I ask people questions all the time because I'm allowed to. The people that are in happy, wonderful marriages that do things with their grandchildren, and how they modulate the time with their husband, the time with the grandkids separately, the time where they bring the grandkids together. And the ones who are doing a really good job of it, I said, well, did you talk about it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you have to mess around with it for a while? Mm-hmm. So that's the other thing with these women who haven't been in a relationship for a while, and this is so fulfilling with their grandchildren. They haven't had a conversation with themselves about, is this really as fulfilling as I'd like? Would I like to have something else? How could I cut back on it and still spend time with them? Where these people that have been married for a while and grandchildren arrive, it was more of an enfolding kind of thing. So it's been more, here's another thing you have to bring consciously to the front of your brain of, well, if you really want to date and you really want to have a man or a woman in your life, then let's start gearing back already. Let's figure out how you can make space for them, because they're like, well, I'll make space when they show up. It doesn't really work very well, because the other person's going to feel very neglected. Mm-hmm. And that's not unhealthy to feel neglected, as long as it's a healthy amount that you've talked about. Some people like, me, I want 3 texts a day. That's so me. But some people don't care if they get a text every, 3 times a week. But if you've said, this is who I am and what I need, is this work into your life? You need to have thought about, what does work in my life? If I spend all day, every day babysitting my grandchildren, how will I have time to date?
That's the thing. You've got to be willing to say no. Because sometimes we say yes automatically, thinking that'll please our lover, but end up stressing us out. That's not good either.
No.
Yeah. No, there's so much to explore. I mean, I know we're talking about how to be an unfailed lover, in a sense, most of the time. Right? But these are key qualities, because getting back to the title in this particular half of the conversation, it is interesting how hard it can be to maintain our friendships when we add a lover into the conversation. It is like sort of thing, because in some cases, what I was doing back in the day, I would swap my friends for a lover. So I'd be one or the other, which is why I would sacrifice my friendships for a lover that ultimately didn't work, because I wasn't doing it right in terms of wasn't putting my priorities in the right order and choosing the right areas to put my focus on. But the idea of having the skill set to actually maintain the friendships you already have, male and female, when you choose a lover that may create some ripples, yes, but it doesn't disrupt everything that you already have established. So your lover fits into your life. Because sometimes I think we have it wide. I think for us men, maybe it's partly because we have this sort of more singular focus. It's like what's in front of us is what's clear. Everything else is off to the side when I think about it. So it's kind of like talk to your friends and say, I'm in a new relationship. Just let you know that I'll be back once I get this thing. Like once you get the handle on everything, get everything in the balance, then you come back to the friendships again. Because that can happen too. It's like you want to try and maintain the friendships as they are. Meanwhile, you want to see your lover twice, 3 times, 4 times a week. You can't do both. There's not enough time in the week. So you've got to choose how do you want to balance it? Or do you want to come back to balance? So
such a good point. And certainly to go, ooh, I'm really into this new person and I'm going to spend some quality time getting to know them. And I'm going to not be able to see you as much. And just give me a couple weeks, give me a couple months and I will be back. I will be back. I mean, that's the thing that's really important to say. I'm consciously thinking about. So sorry.
That's all right. Be back.
Lovely sign of distraction. Good thing it's not catchy, right?
Yes, indeed. Well, especially not through online streaming. No, but when I was going to go that point, because you said it earlier about the communication, this comes in true. It's not just communication with your lover, it's communication with your friends as well. Your friends, you don't want to think it's like, your friends may be telepathic, but you don't want to presume they are. No. Say to them, it's like, just what's happening because they might not be aware that you met somebody because you kept it quiet. So let them know it's like, I may disappear for a couple of weeks, just so you know, I'll be back.
Yeah.
But I'm taking some time intentionally and I'm not saying goodbye to you. I'm just saying, hold on, I'll be back, sort of thing. So having that communication is vital.
So we talked about how you have to have this foundation of communication with this new relationship.
Yeah.
It's really important to have the same amount of communication and conversation with your friends to say, okay, remember we talked about if we get in a relationship, we're might going to disappear for a while. So I'm letting you know I'm pulling that card now and I'll be back. I mean, that's kind of a fun, planned conversation to have with close friends.
Yeah.
Love all this time I spend with you. Hopefully they'll come be part of our circle. But boy, it's the one, it's so funny. This keeps coming up. So I'm going to say it out loud. The ones where, if we're still single in 20 years, we're going to try out having a relationship with each other. Well, it's that kind of a conversation about, when we get in relationships, this is a problem that's happened in the past for me. So I'm going to be proactive and talk about it even before I'm in a relationship.
Yeah.
Because now you're going to remind me, remember what you said about how you're going to make sure you come back and we're going to hold you to it. And go have a lovely time for a couple of weeks or a month. But
don't forget us. Yeah, exactly.
And how fun. I mean, then instead of hurt feelings and misunderstandings, you can have this kind of fun conversation, especially if you're not in the middle of it happening right then. You're like, oh, we could play with this conversation now.
And the thing is, sorry, if you.
I was going to say, because sometimes friends can sabotage, which can be really sad.
That's a different direction, yeah, because that's not a good friend. It's like then it becomes a good relationship with a failed friend.
Yeah,
flipping around. But yeah, that's the thing is to have that conversation. Because if you have good enough friendships, you've been friends for quite a while. You understand the vagaries and the freedoms of life and what can happen, what doesn't happen. And if you're both single at the time, you really love each other's company, enjoy the company. If you're not going down the lover path, as we talked about in the first half of the show, then what do you say to each other to prepare each other for the possibility that one of you may decide, or you both may decide to meet somebody new, or you find you with somebody new, and then you're like, what do you do with that? You drift away. It's like, if you've got good friendships, ideally you want to maintain them.
Mm-hmm. Such a brave conversation. Wow, very adulting to have those kind of conversations.
I think it's about time we do that. Yeah.
And you and I have reached a point in our lives, we've talked about that these are the kind of friends we want to have. The kind that they'll be honest with us. We can be honest with them, that you can have an open conversation about what if, how would you feel about this? And what are you going to do about it? And we don't know for sure, but let's talk about all the possible reactions there could be. I mean, that could just give you an even more rich friendship on top of that. I think that would be excellent. I highly recommend it. We'll get back with each other and let each other know how that goes with our independent friends and say, well, how does that work for you? And how does that work for you? Because I think that's really helpful.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. and just looking back at my friends who I've had, like, who've been through relationships, I've been through relationships, and how we come back together again afterwards. And it is such a dance. So I guess what ultimately we're saying, even though we're giving you lots of tips and ideas and thoughts of what you can do to maintain and to build relationship with friendship at the same time, know it's a very fluid experience, and there's going to be good things and bad things happen. You make mistakes, you pick yourself up. As I said earlier, communication, connection, make sure that you're being honest and you're not hiding away in what you're scared to tell your friends or scared to tell your lover. Be open to that, because frankly, if you can be transparent and honest everywhere you are, in relationships, in your friendships, life gets so much easier.
So much easier. Honest with yourself first, and then
Yes.
honest with the other people in your life.
There you go.
Because if you can't be kindly honest, I don't know why you want to be friends with them.
True.
No, if you have had past experiences like we have, where it didn't work out so smoothly when we traded a good friend for a failed lover, we'd be so happy to chat with you about it so that you don't have to do it again, because it's really painful. It's just really painful.
Yeah.
So the way that you can reach me is to go to my website, which is www.theperfectcatch.com, and click on What's Holding You Back from Love, and you can sign up for a complimentary conversation with me. It'll also sign you up for my newsletter so that you can get a replay of this wonderful podcast. You can, and there also are my videos on my website that I've done personally, as well as or over 110, I think now, Barry and I.
Yes, indeed.
You can also send me a personal email to Christine@theperfectcatch.com. And then you can also go to my social media. So I'm going to sound like you now. So Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter are The Perfect Catch. And then Instagram and YouTube are now at Coach Christine Baumgartner.
Nice.
I know, I feel very official now that I have.
Is there one more?
Pinterest.
No.
Yes.
Pinterest.
Pinterest is The Perfect Catch too.
Should make sure you cover all the bases.
Thank you, Barry. And please tell people how they would reach you.
Certainly. So like Christine, I have a website and a social media. So the way you can find my site is my name, which is barryselby.com. And on my site, on the homepage, you can either go to the bottom of the screen and join my email list right at the bottom. You can just sign up there. Or above at the top of the screen is an invitation to have a mini session with me. We can sign up and experience my coaching. And if you like it, we can go further. And if you don't, we're all good and complete. Also, my website, my book. I have online courses. I have a new program launching called Love After Heartbreak, which is the journey from healing into having a new relationship. If you want information about that, you can just message me. And speaking of messaging me, you can definitely find me on social media. And all my platforms, except for Instagram, are Barry Selby. So Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube especially, where all of these videos we are together are on, plus my own over 1,000 videos I've done through Facebook Live and everything else. So you can definitely find a lot of content to keep you busy for days. So that's all Barry Selby. Also, Clubhouse is Barry Selby. And Instagram is one different one because it's the real Barry Selby, as the original account got hacked. But either way, you can find me, reach out, get support from either one of us. Definitely, if you have questions about this talk, I invite you to put your comments below wherever you see this on Facebook or YouTube. And also, if you have any ideas about what else we can share with you that you've got questions about, we'd love to hear from you as well.
Oh, yes, we love your questions. And we're back here every week on Thursday at 1 o'clock Pacific and 4 o'clock Eastern and all the times in between. So please share this with any of your friends that are having challenges with their dating and relationships, and maybe they'll give us some suggestions for future conversations. We would love that.
Would indeed.
This was fun, as always.
More next week. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you then. Take care.